Put your black power fist in the air. Pledge allegiance to my people, the African race, the original man and woman of the earth, and the founders of civilization. I pledge to continue to struggle, which will help to bring my beloved brothers and sisters to total freedom. I pledge to study and discipline myself mentally, physically, and spiritually so that I may grow into a soldier for justice. Because my people need strong and intelligent warriors. I pledge to live my life standing tall for a person on his or her knees is not respected. But if I'm challenged, I must say I will not surrender my position nor my dignity, but instead, we shall endure until the final victory is won. I share. You may be seated. Thank you. Thank you. Selves a round of applause for coming today. Coming for you with the mind state of liberation, coming from a long legacy of battle stars and freedom fighters. I acknowledge my duties to justice as a Soul Survivors Nation representative, and I'm a humble servant of my community. Elders, may I have permission to speak? All right, thank you. Thanks for coming out. Y'all know how we do Soul Survivors Nation. Thanks for coming out on this Sunday, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You could be anywhere, but of course you're here with us today. What we like to do with Soul Survivors Nation, we say how the Africans feel. I think is this a little bit too loud? Oh, okay. We like to say how the Africans feel, and then as loud as you can, you say the spirit is strong, definitely strong. All right, let's try that. How the Africans feel. A little bit in the back, a little bit weak. Let's try it again. How the Africans feel. All right, thank you. Thank you. Yourselves another big round of applause for coming out. And giving up a round of applause for 29 years. We've been doing this for 29 years, almost 30 years. Coming up next year. We've seen it all. I mean, I was just looking at a tape that we put up the other day, a digital copy of Dr. Llaila Afrika. And I put it up on YouTube, and I was just remembering how much I used to call him and just ask him for advice. Doc, can you tell me this? Can you tell me that? And he was just pretty much almost there. And just the wealth of scholars that I've had in my midst. Dr. Patricia Newton, who, if she was still living today, would be here right here today, because that was her brother right there. They were very close. Dr. Bar Shango, and just the list goes on and on of people that I could call and talk to, but a lot of people who became ancestors. So we got to keep it real. So that's why I said when Brother Smalls comes to town, we better come. You know what I mean? Because, this brother will be 80 years old soon. And, hopefully he'll live to be 120 years old, or so, or plus. But we got to honor those in our midst. I see my lawyer here. I would just give a big round of applause. Mama Shabazz, and today is my older sister's birthday. To give her a big round of applause. She passed away 9 months before my mom did, so, it's big for us. It's our second year without her here. So, I was just reminded when I saw my lawyer, make sure you take care of your paperwork, all of that stuff, wills and all that stuff. And when I saw all of the stuff in handling paperwork, I went a step further. I did a trust. My lawyer told me, no, you want to get a trust. Right now we're going through all this stuff with the wills, and it's a process, a very long process. But when you got a trust, it's a little less lengthy, a little less on point. So, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be bringing her on the show, making sure that you got your paperwork and all your stuff together, because this is a whole process that you got to take. And I've been through it a few times. I've had wills a few times. I take care of paperwork for mom and dad. So, make sure you take care of your stuff, because it can get messy, very messy. But they fortunately took care of their paperwork, and we appreciate that. So we're going to jump right into today. It's about community building, the blueprint. This is based off of the Blueprint for Black Power from Dr. Amos Wilson. I just messed with the words a little bit, and the blueprint for community power, just to further the conversation. So we're going to get ready to bring up a brother who I really respect, who I really love, who's been there for some very critical times in my life, and really love this brother. And anytime I call him, he's there, just like a bunch of other scholars. I understand that Brother Anthony Browder came out yesterday came and bring you up yesterday. It's another brother that's been there, spoke at my mom's transitional service, then you came and did the 40-day service. So I really appreciate these brothers. They've really been here for my family. So give them a big round of applause, family. Our scholar in our midst, legend, Professor Small. Professor Small.
Hotep, thanks everybody for coming out today. It is Sunday. Y'all could have been in the mosque, in the church, in the temple, in the Moorish science, in the Hebrew, and the Buddha. You could have been anywhere. Or you could have just been home watching the football game, basketball games on. What? Basketball. Okay. You know, I've never been, I played football in high school and college, and I've never been a sports fan. I've only been to one football game I didn't play in my life. I did it because I was a big person in my community, and you had a responsibility. So if you're in a school and you're a dude, you're supposed to be responsible. But I never really, and I stay in shape relatively in the martial arts and other things, but I never was big on the sports, on the TV thing. I still don't quite get it, but I understand it, the whole gladiator thing and how the gladiator thing works. But today, Jabari didn't bring the flyer. I didn't bring a flyer. But I really wanted to stay on topic, and I actually was tempted to ask the question of how do we really proceed with this? Do you want to ask me questions and I respond? Or do I give you a lecture about shit you don't want to hear? Excuse me, young man. And then you try to figure out where you can find a question to ask me for me to respond? Or I can do a little overview thing and then stop. Because I do have a plane to catch at 7:40 down in DC tonight. And if I call my wife until I change my schedule, she's gonna start asking some real questions. See if I go like, oh, that's why he didn't leave me the itinerary, huh? I said, okay. But we're in actually good shape as Black people. But we're in real trouble because we don't know we're in good shape, right? We have more college-educated Black people than we've ever had in the history of the world. We have a larger middle class in America than we've ever had in our history of being in America. We have more wealth than most any other Black community in the world, a wealth of close to $2 trillion worth of disposable funds. I know somebody says that don't make us rich, and I understand where the brother's coming from when he's saying that, but Dr. Anderson makes it very plain for us, Dr. Claude Anderson. He says we need to figure out how to aggregate that $2 trillion. Otherwise, it's like just throwing a bunch of pennies up in the air and it's just falling everywhere. So we are wealthy people. We are a very educated class. We've always been the thing that made America works. Most of the technology in America was contributed by Black men and women over the last 400 years plus. Now, they may own the technology because they got the patent thing, they got the banks, and they got the corporations and the institutions, but the people who contributed the technology to this corporation or that corporation have been us. And if you remove us from the equation in America, it doesn't exist. It doesn't stand up to compete with any other space in the world. But somehow we haven't figured out how to separate ourselves. And I figured out what it was. And don't y'all get mad with me because I know y'all love Jesus. It's the Jesus in you. It's the Muhammad in you. It's the Moses in you that won't let you cut something loose. We're the only people in the world. We've been involved in the largest genocide program in the history of the world on any people. Imagine some people raping and murdering and abusing you for 400 years and says, I didn't know that was going on. I wasn't involved in it. 400 years, you can't figure out I'm murdering somebody. 400 years. You make laws to ensure you get away with the murder, and you say, I didn't know that was going on. 400 years. You destroy and crumble anything that resembles the people's culture, the people's language, the people's spiritual aspirations, and then you pretend you didn't know you were doing it. No genocidal program has lasted as long as ours, anywhere in the world being done by anybody in the world. The Jews can play and fake that thing about their oppression, but that's the game they play. As a matter of fact, we know they're not even Jews, you know. But for us, it's been real, and it's still real. And so while I find my little notes, we're going to talk about Haiti. You got a flag coming? That's what I'm talking about. See, that's why he's the boss. That's why he's in charge. How many persons here have been to Haiti in their life? 2. How many persons are of Haitian heritage? Family from Haiti. You realize that there's an attack on the black people in Haiti right now by the American white government. The black elements of our government is this bunch of cowards. They're not saying nothing. They're not doing nothing. Contrary to just a couple of sisters who happen to be Muslim in the Midwest who's raising hell about Palestine. We got that whole big black caucus and their mouth is closed about Haiti. The people in Haiti, they're now trying to, because they want to come in with their army because they've lost control. They're telling you the same thing they told us when Biden wrote the criminal codes that threw so many of our brothers and sisters in the penitentiary. Oh, they're on crack and they got guns. And they're killing people and they're raping people. And so they're gangs. They're Bloods and they're Crips. So we got to murder all the Bloods and the Crips. And we sent all our little babies, go murder them because they wearing a red. Go murder them because they wearing blue. Go murder them because they call themselves a Crip. And we will say it's all right because the community is being made safe. Our community is no safer today than it ever was and won't ever get safe until we make it safe. But they managed to put more black kids in the penal system in a 20-year period of time. And then in 20 year of the slavery period, people being enslaved. And we thought it was all right. We sanctioned it. Bill Clinton signed it. And he put on some dark glasses and played a saxophone and said, I'm the first black president. Bill Clinton opened the bases in Arkansas for General Secord and Oliver North to bring the cocaine in to make the crack from. And then he signed the bill to put our kids in jail for using the crack. But now that their kids are on oxycodone, they changed the law. You don't go to jail anymore. You got a little thing to give you a shot. And then you get some counseling. But Haiti is important. Haiti being the only nation in the history of the world that was born from an enslaved population, creating a republic of their own. No one else in the history of the world, north, east, south, or west, has ever pulled that off. Haiti destroyed Napoleon Bonaparte and brought France down to the ground. Thank you, sir. Haiti created a republic where any black man or woman in the world, if they crossed those borders, were free according to the Constitution of the people of Haiti. Haiti financed the revolution in Central America, South America, financed the Great Boulevard to free their people from Spain's control and asked only one thing: take the shackles off my black people when you get your freedom. Haiti brought an end to slavery in the Western Hemisphere. That was the beginning of the end to slavery in the Western Hemisphere because of those brothers and sisters in Haiti. And they have been suffering ever since for having done that. The vengeance against them have been about that. And they hate our brother Dessalines. They hate Toussaint too, but they really hate Dessalines. So they'll tell us about Toussaint, because Toussaint was acting like some of us act today. Oh, let's sit down and make peace. I know you killed my mother. I know you raped my daughter. I know you burnt my father. And yes, you did crush my house. But let's sit down and make peace. Dessalines didn't say that. Dessalines said, I'm coming to cut your head off because you did all of those things. And you know what he did? He went and he cut their head off. And he burnt their houses to the ground. And he used the term, couper-tête, brûler-cœur. Take their heads, burn their homes. He did that to over 2,000 French people who he told to leave the country. He said, we've defeated you, but we don't want to kill you. We're going to give you a ship. Would you get on the ship and go home to France? We're going to give you enough food and water and guns to protect yourself from the pirates. And there was some who was arrogant enough to say, we're not going. So the ones who got on the boat and went out, they were dirty enough. When the ship just got enough out of the reach, they turned the cannons of the ship back on Port-au-Prince. People just gave you your freedom, gave you your life, gave you food and water for you to go home. And the first thing you do is turn those cannons on Port-au-Prince and open fire. And those who stayed, the whites, they told the Polish people, you fought on our sides. You're now a black man and a black woman. You belong to Haiti. He told the Italians, you fought on our side. This is in literature. This is written down. He told the Italians, you are now black people. You can stay in Haiti as a full citizen. But you French people, because of what you did to us, you got to go. They wouldn't go. So he commissioned his army and he killed all of them. That's why you never hear them mention the name Dessalines. Because he did that. And for that, some of his own comrades collaborated and murdered him in collaboration with the Catholic Church and the French and the American and British and Spanish government. And one of them, I'm a Prince Hall Mason, and I'm proud to be a Prince Hall Mason. Prince Hall is one of the greatest organizations we've ever built in the Eastern Stars. But we don't know enough about them, so we don't know how to keep them up. But they named the lodge in New York Boyer, or Boyer. But Boyer was one of the collaborators that killed Dessalines, along with Christophe, along with Pétion. And then turned and attacked the voodoo religion, which was the very thing that won the revolution, and put us back in the hands of the Catholic Church. So intellectually and psychologically, we lost our way again. And so my discussion today, and somebody's going to time me because I want to know when it's 4 o'clock. I want to know when it's 4:30, because I am not going to miss my plane. Okay? So, but I know you came because there's a lot of things people are looking for, and many of you have got some of the things. That's why you're here. You've been on a journey, but sometimes the journey gets lonely because your own mates, your husband or your wife, not on the journey with you. Sometimes your brothers and sisters in your family, your siblings are not on the journey with you. Sometimes your parents may not be on the journey with you. And it gets very lonely to try to be on this journey of African restoration and not have those who you love the most being on the journey with you, or even appreciating your being on the journey. Because what we're doing, we're bringing something back to the whole family, to the whole household. But in the household, you get disturbed. Brother Brandon, sir. Brother Brandon come all the way down from Houston to hear this lecture. He's the most beautiful brother in the world. Brother Brandon. So this journey that you're on is an important journey. So one of the things we said, how to gain political power. I want to read these 5 things, because I'm probably not going to deal with them at all, but I want to read them and put them out there. How to gain political power. We already know how to do that. We've got political power in Baltimore. What we should have said, how to use political power when you get it. Okay? The need to have a spiritual foundation in our community. We got a spiritual foundation. The Baptist Church, the AME Church, and the other church, but you know what we've allowed? We've allowed for criminals and collaborators to take the spiritual foundation out from under us so that they can make money, send their kids to college. They can have the fancy cars. They can live in a nice suburb. But you got to keep on tithing. Even though the tithing is only asked for on one occasion in the Bible, and tithing is never made to be something you do every week. It was a one occasion thing that should have been done. You know, you ain't never see Christ tithing with nobody. You know, and I'm raising Christ because a lot of times, and I got to do this because nobody's been as hard on Christianity as me. And it doesn't really matter whether the particular brother named Christ that we call ever lived, but somebody like that has lived in every generation. And at that particular time in history, somebody did live, because the Romans was chasing somebody who was fighting against them. And it may well be the man that they're trying to configure. And we know that that type of character has been in our history even before that date and occasion of the Roman Empire. And so when somebody wrote this down in the document to create a memoir for you to pattern your life after, they had to look back at something to get that information. And the only person that had a written culture at that time for them to look back at was an African culture. And so they took our information and recast it in their culture and represented it to us and didn't even know how to teach what they presented. And then we got there and took their confusion and got even more confused. And so those of us who are on this journey now back home, it says the other one says the healing that has to take place between the woman and the man. I'm going to leave that flat. Debunking the myth that we don't have buying power in our community and how to organize. That one is an important one because we have the buying power. We've got money to throw away. Ask Adidas or any of those companies that we made rich for buying some sneakers that was made in Korea or someplace for $2 that we spent $200 for. We know how not to use money wisely. So the thing is how to use money wisely. But it's all going to come back to the same question. Who are you and do you know who you are? See, because who is it that you try? I think Dr. Hilliard told us in a speech once, he said, all content have intent. All content have intent. You're the content. What's your intent? Then the question becomes, how do we determine intent? How do we arrive at knowing what intent should be? And then you have to discuss what is the composition of the content that we're expecting this intent to come from. And that's when we get back to the same old question, spirituality and culture. Spirituality and culture. And we think culture is a good dance troupe or a good rapper or a good gospel singer or a good jazz player. But those things are not culture. Those are tools of culture. Those people are participants, artisans in using cultural tools. The thing is, what is the culture that the tool is trying to teach you about? And do the artisans who are using the tools know what the culture is they're trying to teach you about? And spirituality is not religion. You know, spirituality is your reality. Everybody's here right now because they're participating in an internal spiritual process. Spirituality is your reality. What are your aspirations for this day? Why did you come out here, waste your time to listen to me? You know, I got some cousin back there all the way from South Carolina, you know, and we were just together down in Charleston about 2 weeks ago. So you ain't got enough of me talking yet, right? So this African-American people who don't know how powerful they are, we're the most powerful African nation on earth, and we don't have an army. Not a military one. I mean, you got plenty of guns. Now, I got a gun or two of my own, and I ain't giving them up either. But we don't have an army like other nations that say I'm powerful. But you have power. And everybody wants your power. But you don't know what the power is that you have. The power that you have is that you are the African. See, my sister just rubbing her skin. She said, So it doesn't matter. When we left Africa, we were as light as you. When we left home, we were as dark as you. When we left home, we were as brown as you. We were as beige as you. We came here with all of these colors. But somebody has confused us and think somehow that it's the coming here that no. Go to Kemet. Look on the walls. It's all there. Go to South Africa. We got some of the lightest people in South Africa. Ain't never seen no white folks. We got some that got eyes that make the Chinese envious. Never seen a Chinese person because you are the African. You're the composite. Everybody from Africa amalgamated in North America. into a one African, Pan-African genetic soup, cultural soup. But we don't know how to recognize what's there. And the reason we don't know how to recognize what's there, because the most mundane thing we're afraid to do, study history. Someone is an attorney. Where's the attorney in the room? You can't be a good attorney unless you study history, right? If you're going to do a case, you're going to have to study the history of those decisions made in order to do what you got to do to change the environment that you're involved in with those legal issues. History is the only thing that will erase the mystery that they're putting our way. Not just the history of saying, I'm going to learn the history of Zimbabwe, I'm going to learn the history of Namibia, I'm going to learn the history of South Africa and Kemet, but the history of your family. How many people in your family from South Carolina? 1, 2, 3. How many from North Carolina? How many from Virginia? How many of us really know the history of those states? And then the history of Black people living in those states in the years that we've lived there, and the contribution we've made to those states and to the legalisms in those states and to the Black community's development in those states. How many people, you remember when we started hearing about, I learned it a long time ago, but it became news a few years ago to many when the president went to Tulsa and the discussion about Black Wall Street. In every single state in this country, in multiple spaces, there were Black Wall Streets. And nearly all of them came under assault and attack militarily and was burnt to the ground, and people were murdered. But do we know the story? Do we know who built Wilmington? Who was those Black people in Wilmington? Who built Rosewood down in Florida? Who was those Black people in Rosewood? Who built the different Black communities that was burned down to the ground in Georgia, in Virginia? How many of us really know our history? We do have some books that can help us out, but we don't even use them. How many people have, well, I'm not going to say read because it's a big book, but The Shaping of Black America by LeRon Bennett, Dr. LeRon Bennett. You got to buy that book. Dr. Bennett is an ancestor now. That's a classic work, The Shaping of Black America by Dr. LeRon Bennett. Dr. Bennett was the historical editor for Ebony for most of the years of Ebony, but an extraordinary scholar and activist. And his classic work is, what's that? See, getting old. That 79 is creeping up in there fast. Before the Mayflower, but before the Mayflower with the new revisions, because he added about this much more to that book, almost another 100 pages before he died. Those two books will really give you a sense of African America. And there's nothing wrong with being African America. African is your race. America is a geopolitical place. If you live in China, they would not call you a Chinese. You would be an African Chinese. And no one would consider it a contradiction. But we still down here squabbling like our label is a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. I'm an African. I live in America. I work in America, pay tax in America. I vote in America. I send my kids to school in America. So I'm a part of the geopolitical construct called America. So I'm an American. I'm not a part of the military-industrial complex who dominates the world with its brutality. I'm not a part of the Bavarian forest and some of these other little criminal operations that go on. But I am an American. Most Americans are not a part of those things. But I'm an African. And the race comes with a lot more than the state. Okay? Because the race comes with your genesis, your genetic genesis. And African spiritual tradition deals with that genetic genesis that determines this race. And your genetic genesis starts with God itself. Not with mythical gods now, then God said, let there be light. No, that's not how this one started. That's how the mythical one started. This one started when God decided that it was going to be a Black woman. Just like God decided it was going to be a butterfly. God decided it was going to be a tree. And I want you to follow this because I'm trying to give you something to hook into that will let you see. Because if you hook into some of this stuff, because everything I know, you know, but you don't know what you know. I know what I know, and I know that you know it, but it's all locked up inside of you. The Greek gave us a word that they borrowed from Kemet called educate, to bring something inside out. Education is not to give you something. Education is to give you the tools, the skills, and the training to bring the wisdom of the universe that's inside of you out. That's what education is really about. And the higher persons get that. But they make us think that when they indoctrinate us to think that the indoctrination is the education. No, that's not the education. The education came with the package. Okay? When God created you, God gave you everything you will ever need to function on planet Earth. But it's all locked up inside of you. When we talk about culture, those were methodologies that our African ancestors concocted to carry out the education process to bring the wisdom of the universe from inside outside. You'll understand where I'm going with this, so you can really get it. Because it's simpler than they think. They fooled us into thinking we've lost our Africanness. We never lost our African nothing. They made us forget it. Memory don't die. We can wake up the memory with the right stimulus, the right information. You know? You think memory died? Give me the oldest person in the room and let me give you a kiss. I'll show you that memory hadn't died. You remember, you have all kinds of muscle memories going on. Memory don't die. All of that is in us. Everything that Mali was, that Ghana was, that Kemet was, that Timbuktu was, that Congo was, that all of that knowledge of the universe and the practice is inside of us. The key is how to tool the student appropriately to prepare them to use those tools to bring those things outside of themselves and then put them into practice. That's why it's so important these people control our children in the educational system. If they don't give a damn about us, then give us control of the educational system. But they won't let go because they know if they let go of that, and we're able to tool our babies ourselves appropriately, the world changes like that. Right? But we got to know that because you got to know what battle you're fighting. I was out here in the 60s. We had the guns and we shot some people and we lost unnecessarily a lot of people. And a lot of brothers and sisters went to prison. Some are still in prison 40, 50 years later. Should have never gone to prison. But on your behalf, they did that, those young people. When we buried Sekou Adenga the other day, Sekou started in this movement when he was 14, 15 years old. Sekou was with Malcolm X. Sekou helped found the Black Panther Party in New York. Sekou Adenga helped found the Black Liberation Army. Sekou Adenga led the team that got Assata Shakur out of prison. Sekou Adenga went to prison for you for 35 years and spent 25 years in solitary confinement. You know what the hell that must have been like? And he came back intact. Sekou came home intact. And he died about a month ago from some bacterial infection that he got while he was in the Don Hospital. But just think of Sekou, that young black boy back in the 60s that loved you so much, he did that to his life on your behalf. And he came home and he was not angry at you. 35 years with 25 in solitary confinement. He was not angry at you because Sekou knew something. Sekou knew the thing that he's worshiping, that he calls God, lives within him and not without him. That God lives within you. And anybody that thinks God is without them will never find God searching for God in that space. You'll only find God if you search within you. And our ancestors and all of their teachings was trying to teach us that. All those images we see on the wall in Kemet and the different birds and the animal heads, They're not talking about birds and animals. They're talking about birds and animals as symbols in nature that represents quality and attributes that's in the human character and in nature's character. And that we learn to syncretize those qualities and attributes. That those same quality and attributes is in the cosmos and they're in the earth ecology. So can you recognize them in yourself first, and then you can recognize them everywhere else? Then you can sympathize with them. That's what Ma'at is about, not just recitation. That's what Ma'at really is about. So the thing they're so afraid of is that in your search for spirituality, you might find the person in the mirror that Michael Jackson sings about. I love that song. I don't know if Michael knows what he's doing, but Michael was a very spiritual young man, you know. And he got it at the point they murdered him. He figured out how I'm going to use my power to teach people. And Dr. King has said, it's the language. You got to get the language right. It is how you say what you say. Michael figured it out. And they said, we cannot let that power loose on the world telling the truth like that. But that person in the mirror, you want to find God? Pull up a chair to your mirror. And if you think that's crazy, you go find God any place else and I'll pay you any amount of money you want me to pay. I'll be your servant for the rest of my life. And if you could show me God anywhere else, except for when you see in the mirror, for you. I'm not just talking about the physical facade. The physical simply gets you an opportunity to become acquainted. But what's behind this physical, this matter, this conglomeration of minerals that have come together in the most organized, harmonious way to create you? Everybody in there got a little zinc in them, a little iron in them, a little manganese in them, you even got some gold up in there. You got silver, you got all of it in you. But it's organized just right to make you, you. And though all of us are human beings, males and females, none of us are exactly the same. I was telling people last night, like my finger looks like a finger, but the truth is, this is millions, tens of millions of tiny little people that have grouped together and organized to make a finger appear to be a finger. But it's not really a solid thing because the space between them is just a space that's so tiny that you can't see the space unless you got a microscope. Then you say, oh my goodness, there's things in there called the cells. And there's things in there called atoms and protons and neutrons, and they all got borders and they all have lifestyles. But they have an organized understanding of their only responsibility is to create a finger, not a toe, not a heart, not a mind. Right? They're clear on what their intent is based on what the content is. Right? We as a people have to get clear in that kind of way and not be afraid. Once I used to tell people, burn the Bible, burn the Quran, but that's not feasible because y'all too scared. I burnt mine because y'all scared. But the Bible and the Quran has got all the same truth I'm trying to tell you right now, right in those pages. If you're willing to study the thing and look at your history with the thing. So you can't just study it separate from you, right? Like we used to do when we became Muslims, everybody had to learn a couple of prayers. And that's all you had to do. You didn't have to speak Arabic. You just had to, and you said those 3 or 4 prayers. You was cool. Allah was straight with you and Muhammad had your coat. But nothing changed in the Black community significantly because we changed our religion. Nothing changed. We built the best church. We've got some of the finest churches in America. We went from the little wooden buildings to these cathedrals. Thousands of people come on Sunday, but nothing has changed. Because the only thing that needs to change is you, not the building. Not even your clothing. You, the mind that makes you up needs to change. Otherwise, it doesn't matter how much money you got, you're not going to be free. You're going to go home to your nice suburban home, and you're going to have your nice money, and you're going to have your bottle of capacity up there killing you on one hand, and you're going to have your Merlot killing you on the other. Then you're going to wonder where your wife is when you ain't home, and she's going to wonder where you are when he ain't home. And you're all driving, he got his Mercedes, and you got your Beamer, and you're just doing your thing. They said, damn, I thought all I needed was the money. All I needed was the degree. All I needed was the status. All I needed was, and then you find that none of those things solve the problem. There's nothing wrong with having any of that. I got a nice big house in the middle of New Rochelle, a nice little suburb. I got a whole acre in the heart of the city. Look like a little park. But that don't change the fact that my granddaughter got beat up by some other kids in school who was into this thing we call trans kids, and they were trying to pull her into it, and she wouldn't get into it. And so their little gang jumped my little baby out in the street. But that's my baby. You know what she had done? We didn't know she was being terrorized for months. So she had made herself a homemade knife with 2 blades. I said, baby, how long have you carried this thing? She said, for a year, Grandpa. For a year, she was terrorized, and she didn't know how to even come to us because we weren't appropriately structured so that baby can come and say, I'm being terrorized by these people. Now, I just raised that because even for someone like me, doing all the things I do, my family still have the crippled spots, the broken spots, the infected spots, you know what I'm saying? We're still trying to reconstruct and rebuild ourselves. I'm still, as a person, trying to reconstruct and rebuild myself with all of the stuff I know. But what I do know is that that reconstruction and that rebuilding must happen, and it must happen based on an understanding of the wisdom of your ancestors. The thing you call history is the wisdom of your ancestors. And so if you can understand studying history, sounds burdensome, sounds too easy. It can't be that. Freedom can't be that easy. It's too easy to know what happened in in Santee County in South Carolina, in North Santee, and Grandma Mabel's house. Why is that important? Why is it important to know what Aunt Sass meant to the family? What was she teaching in the family? Why is it important to know when Grandpa went to the Knights of Pythias meeting or the Masonic meeting, what they were doing? Why is it important to know at St. Anne's Baptist Church, when I grew up, why they had a school that black people had built on the back of it with one teacher in one classroom, as Betty Murray taught me from kindergarten to 7th grade. She just passed away 3 years ago. All of her children went on and finished high school, and about 75% of us went to college. We were in one classroom with one lady teaching from the 1st grade to the 6th grade. What does she do to us that allowed that to happen? Me and my brothers and all of us have been involved in the movement. What did she do? She didn't have a computer. She didn't have a cell phone. I know we didn't have a phone in the school. We took turns chopping wood every day to build a fire in the stove when it was cold and so forth. So but out of that, because she was able to do something to this, we were able to do different things around the world. Become lawyers, become doctors, become school teachers, become engineers, become entrepreneurs from a one lady in a one-room classroom, half as big as this room we are in today. What was going on there? That she understood that God lived in you. And she always told us that. There was a sign, a big sign, up over the blackboard. It was, do unto others as you have them do unto you. It seemed like such a simple thing, and we all had to recite that every morning. And then later I learned that, but don't do it because you expect somebody to do anything unto you. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And you bring that into consciousness. Studying your history, you'll see the culture. When we went into the black church after the Civil War, because there wasn't that many of us in the church before the Civil War. Now, there was an AME church that started in the 1700s, and there was a Baptist church, an African Baptist church that started in Atlanta, Georgia, and then South Carolina in the 1700s. But the majority of black people were still doing African things secretly. But after the Civil War and the terrorism of the Klan and the other white supremacist groups started, we had to find a sanctuary place. So the church became the sanctuary. It was the safe zone that we can go in one day a week and be African without being slaughtered by somebody. And even then, they kicked those doors down. But for the most part, we found safety in the church, safety to be Africans. But we couldn't just be Africans even in the church outwardly. So we had to take their documents, right, and find ourselves in it. You all understand what I'm saying? You had to take their document and you had to find Harriet Tubman and Moses. So you can have a discussion about Harriet Tubman, but you never use her name, you use the name Moses. Okay. You had to go in there and find Aaron, despite all of the things that he did wrong. And you had to find Nat Turner and Aaron, but you couldn't talk about Nat Turner, but you could talk about Aaron. And you could talk about Frederick Douglass, but you had to talk about Joshua marching around Jericho. Because Douglass at that time was the articulator. And we had others who was using words. If you go and start studying your history, this mundane African American history that people make you think is nothing, you're going to find yourself in a way you never thought yourself existed. How many persons ever read Booker T. Washington's speech that people erroneously call the Atlanta Compromise? These two people. You'll need to go online and get that speech. It's called the Atlanta Compromise, but it's really a speech called the Atlanta, it was at the Atlanta Exposition speech. In this speech, this one man took the English language, spoke to 4 different communities at the same time without ever having any of the other 4 communities think they was not speaking to or understood what he was saying to the other communities. You got to read this speech. This is no compromise. This is absolute genius. Booker T. Washington was one of the greatest leaders we've ever had in America, and they've got us not even talking about him. Not even talking about him. But if you study your history and erase his mystery, you'll see your truth, and you'll see your fire and your power, how it manifests itself right there for you in time and space. You know, in that speech, he told the black people, put your buckets down where you are. Okay? The code word for that is hold onto your land, don't sell it. Put your buckets down where you are, don't move. Hold that land. We didn't listen. We lost the land. Not all of it, but too much of it. He told the white man, that was the speech to the black man. In the next couple of sentences, he told the white man, we, in the days of old, when your fathers were on their sick bed, we served them. Now here's the backside to that. We could have killed the sucker, but we didn't do that, right? We took care of him. Then he said, so why? And this is a time when the Germans and the Jewish and the Irish immigrants is flooding America right after the Civil War. So he's telling them, he says, why would you take someone whose he says this in his speech, why would you take someone whose language and culture you do not understand and show up to replace me, like they're doing right now? Read that speech. Booker gave you a window on the future. But they tell you it's a compromise, and he was a sellout. Well, if all sellouts are going to leave me at Tuskegee, start selling out, okay? Because he left us Tuskegee University. And without him, we wouldn't have gotten George Washington Carver. Without him, you wouldn't have gotten the Marcus Garvey. And for all of those who praised Marcus and tried to put Booker down, you better look who invited Marcus to America. Booker T. Washington did. Said Booker was murdered before Garvey could get here. How many people in here, and I'm going to ask you this question because you should know. Where did Booker Washington die? Somebody got it on a train. On a train in the Baltimore, Maryland train station on the way back to Tuskegee after having been poisoned in New York City at a meeting with T. Thomas Fortune, W.B. Du Bois, Monroe Trotter, who he was trying to make peace with, and a bunch of white folks. Because they won't say he got poisoned, they just said he got sick at the dinner table. And they put him in the hospital. And when he realized he wasn't get well, he sent a telegram to Tuskegee and told his wife and aide to come and get him because he was going to die. He wanted to die in Tuskegee. But he made it here to Baltimore, and he died in the train station here. You need to know this stuff. Then it'll allow you to be Booker T. Washington. You can channel Booker T. Washington. You can get into the head of Booker T. Washington. All of our brothers and sisters from the Caribbean who come to this country, and sometimes some of them give us a hard time of how smart they are and how much opportunity, blah, 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 blah. Do you know that America tried to pass a law to make sure nobody black from the Caribbean or Africa could ever come to America? Booker T. Washington led the fight and defeated that piece of legislation. He beat them down. He backed the best black lawyers in this country to take on the U.S. Congress, and he won. Nobody talks about that. I love W. Du Bois. He was one of our brilliant scholars too, but we've allowed him to drop too. We don't know Du Bois' history. We don't know his contribution. But the white man said, oh, him and Booker T. Washington had a fight. So what? I used to fight with my cousins, fight with my brothers. We all used to have a little battle here and there. And it's trying to make it like a battle of ideology. It was no battle of ideology. They both fell in love with the same woman. When brothers do that, they get a little stupid. Study, but you're not going to notice that unless you study the history. You got to read and see. But Booker ended up marrying the lady, and Du Bois is mad. But he stayed friends. Him and Booker Washington stayed friends till the very end. So I know Du Bois wouldn't harm him in that meeting. Du Bois was trying to bring him and Trotter together to stop the breach in the black community. When W. Du Bois go to England to set up the conference, right, that we now call one of the greatest conferences on Pan-Africanism, he was accompanied by Booker Teleferia Washington, who paid for the trip. Du Bois had no money. Booker T. Washington used his mighty business network to do the propaganda and the advertisement for that trip all around the world. But because he didn't go there and make a speech, people called him a traitor. They didn't have sense enough to see the work the man did to make the thing happen. That's because they didn't study history. They are caught up in the white man and a little Zionist mystery. History is the most important tool you have towards your liberation process. History is the most important tool you have towards your spiritual development. I mentioned one other sister, because she spent a lot of time in this town teaching. Henrietta Benton Davis. How many people know? Raise your hand. Henrietta Benton Davis. One sister. Henrietta was the number 2 person to the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. Henrietta was from, they weren't sure whether she's from Washington or Baltimore. She was a school teacher. She was an educator. And she was an actress. They called it an elocutionist back in the day. She was the one that gave the keynote speech at that big thing at Madison Square Garden. She was the one that was on the Black Star Line on his first maiden voyage as the leader of the Black Star Line when the sheriff and them stopped them in Jacksonville, Florida. Henrietta Benton Davis. Her name is out there now. There was a time it wasn't out there, but the brothers and sisters at UNIA in Philadelphia, where she died, really pushed to get her information on social media and online. This lady was a powerful sister. When Garvey went to prison, this is the lady who was in charge of the UNIA. Why don't we know that? She was a member of the AME Church. And so by using the AME Church platform, that's how Garvey was able to get all of America like that, because he had the platform of the AME Church, which was then the biggest church in America for us. And Garvey was wise. He went around Black America to ask them, what are the problems, before he even established UNIA. And it was this lady who was a protege of Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was her teacher. We need to know this. Then you can link things up. And then your history will make sense to you. These are the things that are important if you want to know who you are spiritually. Me, I'm just God having a human experience. That scares you because you think Jesus is going to jump up the cross and slap this out of you. That ain't going to happen. All right? I keep coming back to Jesus because I know that stimulates y'all a little bit. So I'm going to tell y'all a story on how he escaped from the cross. Tell you why you need to study history. In your Bible, right? They said that there was a situation with the Romans in Palestine, right? And there was a man who had been baptized by his cousin, a guy named John. And John, and that the symbol of that baptism and a dove landing on his shoulder was this, and his riding in on a donkey with them saying Hosanna and throwing the little thing you use for Palm Sunday on the ground was the signal that this is the Messiah. And in that coming into town and hoopling and thinking he's a big man, the Romans got pissed off. They said, you're not going to come in here and start no revolution in our town. And so he goes to the temple and he runs everybody up out of there. Now, the temple is symbolic of the banks in Wall Street today. Now, can you imagine us go down to Wall Street and do what Jesus did in the temple in Palestine? The force that would come against you, well, that's the force that came against him and the young men with him. And there was a young woman. He had a wife, too, yeah, very fine sister, too. But y'all don't even see her. Why? Because everybody call her a whore and a harlot. Yet there's nothing in the Bible that called Magdalene a whore or a harlot. Nowhere in any Bible in the world. So why do preachers do that? So you won't see the bouncing ball. Then Jesus gets arrested. I'm just telling y'all some history now. Y'all can go check this stuff out. And it's right in the Bible. You can start with the Bible, but you can find some supportive documents. There isn't a lot, but you got Pliny the Younger writing. You got Josephus writing. And so you can find some literature that will support some of what's in the book. So they throw my man in jail. But they throw a bunch of his boys in jail that day. But the main guy they threw in jail was his son. Anybody know who his son was? Who said that? Yeah, you've been reading some of that secret society stuff, huh? But no, you're right. Barabbas means the very name. Hey, Femi, how you doing? That's my Nigerian cousin. He said he's going to make it here. I know he was so tired last night. Bar in Hebrew means son of. Rabbis means Lord. The thing is right there in front of your face, but you don't see it. Barabbas, son of the Lord, right? Jesus escapes. He go up into Gethsemane with his boys and they're bragging. And remember, they were in a fight, right? Because when the centurion comes up, what does Peter do? Peter pulls out a sword and chops the dude's ears off. Now, that don't sound like no peaceful bunch of dudes to me. This is in the book, right? Isn't this in your Bible? But see, y'all don't want to read that. Y'all read it and then block it. But if he got a sword and he's chopping somebody's ears off, these are soldiers. These are guerrilla fighters. But Jesus put a hold on that because Mary had said, you go get my son out of jail. You figure it out. You the Lord. You the big man right here. You revoluting. You go get my boy out of jail. So Jesus turns himself in so Barabbas would be released. But nobody ever tries to figure out why would they say, oh, Barabbas was a murderer and a thief. So why are they going to release him for this guy? Because you're not really reading the literature that's right there in front of you. You're not studying it. Because it tells you, everybody tells you, it's folklore, symbols, and allegories that's put together to tell you a story, to recount some historical experience that you can't just tell straight out. So we got these tools to tell stories. It doesn't end there. So they hook the brother up. Barabbas goes free. Mary's happy. I'm not talking about his mom, Mary, now. I'm talking about his wife, Mary Magdalene. And you're like, yeah, it's small. You're going too far. Now, I'm not giving the Lord a wife and everything. But I'm going to just finish the story and then I'm going to come back to our line. Somebody keep me on time. Oh, I've got good time. So I can tell my story. See, a good historian should be a good storyteller, too. Right? And I'm trying to be a good historian, so I'm learning how to tell good stories. So Jesus, we know in the Hebrew tradition, Friday leads into the Sabbath when the sun goes down. By the time they start taking Christ to the cross, even according to the Bible, it's in the afternoon. It's around 2:33. So they got to get him up there, kill him, get him off, and bury him before sundown. Because once Sabbath starts, you can't do none of this stuff, right? So they get to the cross, and there's two other brothers up there. They done steal some stuff, like brothers do on occasions. Don't worry, I pulled a few burglaries in my days too. I used to steal stuff. I thought it was cool. We weren't doing it for money. We were just young and stupid and thought it was cool. And I later went back to the man after I got out of the military and took all the money out of the store from Mr. Buxton. And because he owned a motel and a restaurant there. And I gave him back, and he threw that money on the ground. He never spoke to me again. I thought, I was going to get, vindicated. But his son picked the money up. He wasn't stupid. He took that money. But here's Jesus with the two brothers. Now, in the book, they said they broke the two brothers' legs. You know why? Because it's the Sabbath, right? And the sun's going to go down, and they ain't going to be dead yet. And they can't leave them up there because it's the Sabbath. That's the law of the land. So they said, we're going to break these dudes' legs so they can't run away. And we'll kill them a little later. Because, see, you died on the cross from asphyxiation. When your body weight pulls you down, it causes these muscles in your neck to squeeze and cause you to die from suffering. It takes days to do that. So here they know they couldn't do that way. So here's what they do. They break the brother's leg, but guess what? They don't break Jesus's leg. Why? Because he got to walk away. But they don't break it. Nobody ever asked, why did they break these two guys' legs but don't break his leg? Because Jesus had the escape fix in. He had to fix in. And the brother told me, when this preached him, well, small, I got you now. They stuck him in the side with that sword, with that spear. We got any nurses in the room? Any physicians? We got a nurse. You know that if your, what does he call it? When the body calls for oxygen from the brain. Metabolism, when a person bleeds blood and water, it means that your heart is the brain isn't calling. He's in such a deep meditative state. The brain isn't instructing the heart to pump very much blood, just enough oxygen to keep the organism alive. And that's why you see blood and water, even today, come out of a person rather than just straight blood. Now, how they knew that shit back then? I don't know. But we know we were great scientists even then. So he bled blood and water. But that ain't the catch to it. Before they stuck him with the sword, he told them, I thirst. And what did they give him? What did they give him when he said, I thirst? Vinegar and gall. Gall in the Hebrew language is pure poppy juice. Vinegar is fermented apple juice. Jesus was high as a kite. All right? And that slowed down his body metabolism to the point they could have stuck him 3 times and he would not have bled to death because his heart would not be pumping enough blood for him to lose that much blood and die. But that's where the sisters came in, because once they got him down off that cross in their tomb, those sisters, the healers, had to go in and get to work. That's why they'll tell you in the story on Sunday morning, there wasn't no brothers standing there. It was some women telling the brothers, oh yeah, the Lord just left. He said to tell y'all to meet him over in such and such city. But y'all don't even read this stuff. You don't even think of what you're reading. The women are saying that your Lord left the message with us to give y'all. And then old Thomas is going like, nah, I don't believe that. We saw him die, right? But he tells Thomas when Thomas gets there, he said, do what? He didn't say, put your hand through my spiritual hole, did he? He said, put your hand through the hole that the nail made, which means you're dealing with a physical object, right? It's all right there in front of you. They're telling a story that's part history and part folklore. But a lot of it is history. And I know how to do that well because most of you know that I'm a consultant on The Godfather of Harlem, right? People come to me, it's more, is that real history? Part of it is, but we tried to put the history and the fiction so close together, you can't tell the difference between the two. You know? And that's what the Bible does. It tells story. Now, the reason it tells story in that way, because the European population for which the Bible is written is an illiterate population. They don't read and write. 99% of the people in Europe, when the Bible is written, cannot read or write. So you've got to present a document that will be given to them orally by the priest that use symbols to explain concepts, ideas, and principles. And since it was black folks that wrote the Bible for the white Roman folks who was in charge, we did that very well, because that's what we do. That's what hieroglyphics is. Hieroglyphics was written for an illiterate black population that could not read or write for the most part. But you can use symbols out of nature that would convey ideas, concepts, and principles just visually, so you didn't have to be able to read. Now, the cursive forms was for the elite who could read. The Demotic script and the Hieratic script. But the hieroglyph, the picture script, that was for the masses. So I'm just telling you how important history is to solving the mystery. So, what's your star, sister? What's your plan? Yeah. What's your star? What do they call it? What is it? What's your star? Your zodiac said, yeah. Are you a Capricorn or Libra? Which one? You. Capricorn. Tell me about Capricorn, girl. You be on it now. When you want to let people know who you really are, you let them know you're a Capricorn. Right? And what's your sister? Gemini. Twin, right? Go ahead. What's yours? Don't get choked now. Pat her on the back. Pisces. And we all know that those things, don't we? I know my star. I'm a what they call, I'm a Libra rising in Scorpio. You know. But what does any of that mean to you? If you study history and erase the mystery, you see that, what do you call it? When you study the stars, astronomy had to give you a way to know astronomy when you weren't a scientist. So astronomy gave the masses astrology to explain astronomy. Now, think that in your brain a little bit. So the masses ain't got time to study no stars. He got to raise the sheep and the cow, and he got to fish it, and he got to make the boats, and he got to make the nets. And this one is planting cotton, and this one is planting corn, and this one is building buildings, and this one is making brick mud to make bricks for the houses, and this is building the house. So they ain't got time to be looking at no damn stars all night. So they hire some people. We call them priests today, but they didn't call them priests. These were scientists. And they said, we'll take care of y'all, but you interpret cosmology for us so we could know how to behave, right? And then there were other scientists who was to interpret ecology so we would know how to enter relationship with them. But now we got to explain this to the masses of people who don't read, don't write, and don't have a knowledge of these things. And that's where geometry comes in. Geometry explains to people how to divide things, especially the land that we all have to share without encroaching upon one another while we're trying to raise our crops or raise our beasts, our cattle and our goats and so forth. Geometry become a wonderful way to decide where the boundaries are. You know? And those who are studying the stars and stuff, they're telling you, oh yes, you don't fish on these days, because on these days, the fish is full of eggs and they're pregnant and they got to have babies. And how do we know the fish is full of eggs and pregnant, got to have babies on that day? Because that star was here and that constellation was there and the moon was there and the sun was doing this. And so anytime those configurations occurred, don't touch the fish because the fish is having babies. How do we know? We've studied that multiple cycles and we see that in these cycles, this is what's happening. You understand me? So if you begin to understand that, now I tell this over to people, I add a little bit more every time so you can get it, that spirituality is your reality. What the white man is calling science is your sacred science that he stole from you. He took God out of it. took away all of the divine elements of it, but he kept the technology that we call science, and he uses it. He's just still interpreting African stuff. He's got so many books in his libraries and the Vatican and other places that he hadn't even learned how to read well yet. Sister is a lawyer. I'm going to come back to you, because you're the law. Ma'at. Ma'at is all about legalisms. It isn't just peace, justice, harmony, balance, reciprocity, but Ma'at, when you go anywhere in America, this sign for justice is what? The scale, right? And a lady. That's your Ma'at, right? So he understands, when he looks at the African symbolisms and the literature that back those symbolisms, that this is about law, right? In a construct that will produce justice. And he's been trying to imitate that. If you ever seen the picture of the papyrus with the man standing with somebody and he's by the scale and his heart is on that scale and a feather is on the other side of the scale. But on the other side of the scale, you got a brother who's the court recorder. He got a pen and he's recording all the proceedings of this trial that's going on between, because the heart symbolizes the deeds, the actions of the individual against something that is the judgment of what is true and what is not true, which is called a feather. And then when he gets through, the bailiff taking the man and taking him to the judge. Every aspect of the American legal system is one little African papyrus, and most of us miss it. But guess what's in that same little papyrus? Every aspect of the Christian religion is also in the same papyrus. Except the bailiff is no longer bailiff, meaning the court recorder is no longer the court recorder. That's St. Peter. The bailiff is no longer the bailiff. That is Jesus. The judge is no longer the judge. That is God. And you can't enter the kingdom except by to see the Father except by the Son. And then on top of that, they got the 12 disciples, the 12 jurors, and the 12 disciples. And then God and the man is being judged. In one document. But we look at it and just see the pretty symbols from Kemet, and we put it up on our walls, and we never really studied the thing and said, what is this book really saying to me? But the white man's been studying your stuff. And he's built whole societies on the study of your stuff. Because he understands the importance of history. Otherwise, we would not be fighting so damn hard against Black history in the school system. What do you think he's fighting so hard for? He know that if you get this to organize your brain by, he's in real trouble. Because you're going to wash that thing right out of your hair. Him. So history erases the mystery. History is very important. Stop taking it so lightly. Because history is your story. Everyone in it. Brother Brandon, you got a mother and father? Of course I know, because I know your mom and dad, right? And you have grandparents, right? You still have grandparents. You see, because Brandon here is his mother and father going forward. Brandon's mother and father was him in a time before this time. Brandon's children will be him in the future. But he will never change other than in facade. You all understand me? I am my mother and father. I don't just look like them or come from. I am they. People say, well, if you're there, what is your brothers and sisters? All of us are aspects of them going forward. And all of them, those two people were aspects of the 4 grandparents we had coming forward. And the 4 grandparents was aspects of the 8 great coming forward. That goes back infinitely back to God itself as the initial occasion of the human experience beginning. So God is your greatest ancestor. Learn that historical trail going back. Think of it now. I'm trying to make this stuff easy and not so complicated. People say, you need to write a book about it. No, I read them, trying to tell you in a sentence It's you, God, having a human experience. How many women in here have given birth to children? How many people in this room have seen children being given birth to in any other way? No, don't get scientific on me now, because I'll beat you up. Don't go there. But yeah, we got in vitro and we got the thing and the test tube and all of this. But it is the woman, after having made it with the men, that carry out that aspect. Now listen to this word aspect. That carry out that aspect of God's function in recreating. God, the only way God recreates is through you. And that means you're not something over there that God said, well, you're going to recreate for me. You are that part of God that recreates. That part of God is the important part of that statement to remember. You are that part of God that recreates. If you understand that and understand the piece I was talking about, Brandon is his ancestor. His ancestor ain't back there dead someplace. He's the ancestor. He's the ancestor. There's never any such thing as death. Every bit of mineral that made us up today was dirt yesterday. We got this mineral in us that made us these size and these height and these colors and shades we got from the food we ate, who got it from the dirt. Carrots got it from the dirt and the sun. We're just a bunch of dirt. But so when they tell you ashes to ashes, dust to dust, they ain't kidding. That's exactly what you are. We are dirt, all the minerals. I told you last night, you see the zinc in our 401? Be having some serious conversation with the zinc in me. The iron in this brother sitting there is having a conversation with the iron with the brother. We don't even know these conversations going on because we too out of tune for one another. We know things attract us to each other. We know you see a sister or brother in a room or some space and you feel attracted to them. You don't even know why. Because the zinc in that person found something they wanted to deal with in the zinc in the other person. And the manganese in that person wanted to communicate with the manganese in the other person. But you don't have a relationship with your manganese or your zinc or your iron. You think you got to go to the store and buy it in a bottle. And understand the reason you go to the store and buy it in the bottle is because your life's habit and behavior, your eating habit and exercise habit and so forth, and this polluted environment has eroded the natural ones that's in your body, and you're trying to supplement it. But we don't even know what supplement means when they say you're buying a supplement. You're supplementing something, meaning because the thing's already there, you just got to just add a little bit more on top of it. So you are those 400 or more minerals or elements. You're made up of them. Everybody is. And that's what makes up everything else in nature. You are nature transposed as this human expression of the divine. You all understand that? That getting complicated. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to go out anywhere and look for God. That's such a silly thing to say God in the sky. God in everything. God is omnipotent, and I'm using God because we speak English. God is omnipotent. God is supreme. So nothing else can exist in that space but it. So what are we? We can only be expressions of aspects of that existence, existing in the space as the thing. As the thing. There's no way to take us out of God. If that was possible, God would cease to be God, but we can't be taken out of God. That's what makes God omnipotent and omnipotent and supreme. But we say those words and we don't even try to figure out what any of those words mean. And then we come back to Africa. Africa, this sweet, beautiful piece of the planet Earth, where all of what exists had its birth. And we have been made to reject it, while those who have taught us to reject it is beating the path to it every day, all day. You ever get on a plane going to Africa? 90% white folks. They hate us up over here. They hate it. We trumping y'all. But we on that plane headed to Africa. I remember once it blew my mind. I'm on a plane going to Ghana maybe 15 years ago, and there was a young white guy. So I think about this, ask him, where is he going? And he tells me, I'm going home. I said, no, but I said, then Ghana, a stopover for you? He said, no, Ghana's my home. I said, well, how did Ghana get to be home? He said, I was born there. And I said, well, where did your mother and father come from? He said, they were born there. And so he was going home. I thought, shit. How does he get to say I'm going home? And I got to go figure out whether I'm going home. Because we aren't willing to accept the truth of history. I am the same person that was on the slave ship. You are the same person that was on the slave ship. You had that experience. But until you are able to go into your history, to remember the experience, so you can find a solution to the trauma that the experience is still causing in your very daily behavior. Right? See, you got Femi over there? Femi is from Nigeria. But Femi is also an African American. He's lived there longer than most people in African America. Femi is a Yoruba. Femi is from, what's your state, Femi? Ondo State. So Femi is from Ondo State. He's a Yoruba man, he's a Nigerian man, and he's a Ghanaian man, and he's a Nigerian man, then he's an African man. And none of them are contradictions. He's all of those things. And he owns, I know from him, he owns all of those things as his identity. Now, Dr. Hilliard told us you've got to be, true freedom is to be shackled to your identity, to be shackled to it. Right? And so when you shackle to your identity, no one can enslave you. That's why Sekou could sit in solitary confinement for 25 friggin' years and not lose his mind. Stepped out of jail. You know what the first thing he did when he stepped out of jail? Got 3 of the other Black Liberation Army brothers out of prison. Sekou Odinga, 25 years in solitary confinement. But he would not let them take away his Africanness. He studied his history. He studied his culture. He studied his people. He knew his spiritual limits. Everything I'm talking to you about, this African culture. I'm speaking English, but I'm talking African culture. The way I said God should be viewed, that's how Africans view God. There's a book called Montu. It's written by a white dude back 30, 40 years ago. Anybody ever read Montu? That book, Montu? Y'all got it in the bookstore, Montu? I forgot who the author is. I think he's from Poland or someplace. But he did a heck of a good job. But in the book, one of the things he says is that he talks about the Bantu language. Bantu is simply, when we think Bantu, B-A-N-T-U, do you know that N-T-U means God? And the Ban means the people. So he's saying that, and then there's the word Montu, which means the man, Man, and Tu. In all African language, if you look at their word for people, person, place, or thing, the suffix or the prefix will be their word for God. So in our culture, we were very clear, God is in every and all things at once. God is in everything. The Ewe would refer to God as Sobe Lisa. The totality of creation is what the word means. The totality of creation is divinity. And you're a part of that totality as an African person. You sure you're getting this, sister? Came a long way now. Okay. African culture is your only salvation. But you must know African history to begin to truly understand African culture. And you start African history with the African that you are, with the African family you were born in, whether it's Tennessee or Nairobi, whether it's Alabama or Accra, Malcolm said, what? A cat having a kitten in an oven did not make them biscuits. The kittens remain kittens. And wherever the African had its kittens, they're still African kittens. And if you understand that clearly, you don't let nobody ever take that away from you. And maybe an African that speaks with a Louisiana accent, an African that speaks with a Haitian accent, an African that speaks with a Jamaican accent, or one that speaks with a Yoruba Ondo State accent, or one that speaks with a Congo accent, but I'm still an African. And they've taken that away from us. They're making us think because they drew some line on a piece of paper after 1885 determines what my identity is. I am the world. I am the universe itself. You are the universe itself. But only African culture will let you see that clearly and understand that in practice. How do I practice that? And then you'll explain to you why kissing someone on the lip make them want to have certain behavioral practice. What is the relationship between kissing and want to reproducing? We never think about it, we just do it. You don't think about, what has this got to do with reproduction? There is I think Sister Marimbani wrote the book, The Circle Unbroken. The Circle Beyond. There is a loop in the human body, and there's a loop in the universe, and it's never broken. It's all connected. Everything in your body is super wired to everything else in your body. Your brain is a generator. It's an electrical plant that sends the appropriate energy to every organ in your body at the appropriate time and the appropriate amount. Unless something happens to you, you get injured or you get sick. Then you get something like a stroke because you get this or that, or you get an aneurysm, or you get bludgeoned or hit by something. And then the generator don't work properly no more, and it can't send the energy out no more, and things in the rest of the organism malfunctions. But you are the universe. Your brain is the sun. Ra is not some sun up in the sky. Your brain is Ra. Your brain is Ra. Heru is every thought you give birth to. Heru is every thought you give birth to. Aset is the process by which birth is given to everything that is birth. It's not a woman. It's not a man-child. It's not a sun up in the sky. They're using those symbols to try to explain concepts, ideas, and principles that make you function as an organism within cosmology and ecology. That's just basic African culture. And check my time. I got you, Javon. I'm looking good, right? Yeah, okay. Just 3:01. There's a man. He's an ancestor now, except as he lived with his children. His name is Nerengora Bura. It's from Ivory Coast. I wish you could get his books, but it'd probably be hard to get. He has a 3-volume set, big books. It's called The African Gold Weights. And it's showing you an African language system pre-Medu-Neter. We call some of it the Akan Adinkra system. This is pre-Medu-Neter. It's the book is called The African Gold Weight System. And I can't weight, because they used these little symbols on the scale when they were weighing gold. But the symbols come from a whole linguistic system of the Akan people. And if you know anything about the Akan people and the Yoruba people, they're genetically the same people, but culturally diverse. They're the largest ethnic group on the continent of Africa when you combine those two groups together. But they're part of the community that we call Bantu, which is 90% of people on the continent of Africa. Right? But he wrote a second book. That's a 3-volume piece. And I'll make sure and send his name spelling to Jabari. And then you can reach Jabari and get his name, because you should be able to order those books even if you have to go through France to get them. I think you can still get them. It's 3 of the most important documents you'll ever get your hands on. They're big books, but this big, this wide, this thick. Then the other book is a smaller book. It's written in French. And it's called Drumology. Drumology. Now, who would think of drum with an ology on it? By Bura, Nyangora Bura. And I don't know how to spell it. That's the closest to the pronunciation, Nyangora Bura. In the drumology, he tells a story about the master drummer, who we call the griot. Some you see people playing the drum. Most of the time they ain't saying nothing. They're just making sound. Unfortunately, because they have not learned the language of the drum. They can make some beautiful rhythmic sound. You know, we do all kinds of rhythm, but there's a language in the drum. Femi, who is related to the royal family in his country, know that there are things called the talking drum, because the drums have been so tuned and the player have been so trained and skilled that they can make the drum skin vibrate at the same rhythm of the vocal cord in a human being when making a sound in the language. And so they can be sitting there, a Yoruba man could be sitting there and they'll be playing his drum and we just be dancing because it's good music, but the Yoruba person is having a conversation that the ancestors have sent to the king. Okay. I've seen it done in the Akan, Santa Hene, and the Ashanti nation. When they bring out the drums about so big, when they bring them big things out, and they go dum 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 dum, dum 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 dum. We just listening to some cool drum beats, right? But they're linguists, they're hearing, and then they go over to the king and whisper, telling the king what the ancestors have told the drummer to tell the linguist to tell the king. It's language. It is the recording of your history. None of our history has ever been lost because it's all recorded in the drum rhythm. None, but hundreds of thousands of years of rhythm is recorded and kept by the secret society of the drummers. You can't even play in public until 45, I think it's 45, 46. You have to train. Matter of fact, the little monkey that you will kill to make the skin from, you have to raise it yourself from a baby. The tree that you're going to make the drum from, they'll take you to that tree and you have to cultivate that tree until at the point in which you cut it down to clean it out to make your drum. You, the tree, the monkey must have a relationship. So by the time you get the drum and start getting trained on how to play that drum, y'all are all one. Now, does the white man have any science like that? No. Do we even realize we had science like that and still have it in Africa? Didn't go no place? But they're telling us we lost it. Colonialism took it. Imperialism took it. Slavery took it. No, they didn't. All they've done was throw some dust in your face and you have lost your memory. And Malcolm used to say, you done lost your mind. So I'm just trying to show you the importance of history. These little tidbits I give you, you go like, how the hell does he know all that stuff, right? Because I've been out here trying to study history, trying to learn my story and get a clear understanding of how I can use that to make my daily bread. And so we can bring it down as I'm going to wind down to end to some of the questions he have on the document. And he says, how to gain political power. The easiest way to gain political power is to love yourself. And he may say, very small, how does that work? Now, how does loving yourself, what does loving yourself got to do with gaining political power? See, but once you learn your history And once you learn your culture, you will learn to love yourself. And once you learn to love yourself, you want to protect that which you love. The first steps you got to do to protect that which you love is to provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for that which you love. In order to provide that, you must control the economic, politics, and culture where you live. Malcolm X called that black nationalism. Plain and simple. The Chinese call that Chinese nationalism. The Jews call that Jewish nationalism. And we control the economic, politics, and culture where we live. And once you get clear on that and realize in order to make that work, you got to be in charge of land and labor and resources where you live, then you realize the importance of political power being in your hands. So then you got to do the study in history of how politics work and how the political system works and how you're going to get control of that system where you live to make it work for you. But you start with knowing thyself and loving thyself. This comes from learning the history of thyself. Can't separate those things. And when you do that, the world gets afraid of you. See, they understand how the thing works. That's why when Booker T. Washington said, put your buckets where you are, they said, oh, we don't like that. Because if you put your buckets where you are, you're going to control millions and millions of acres of land. And you're going to plant millions and millions of acres of corn and wheat and cotton and other things that's going to provide the food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for you and your family. We can't have that. So we got to find a way to disrupt that. And the way to disrupt that is to disrupt the consciousness that lets you love yourself enough to know that you need that. See, you need that. Talking about building a community. To build a community, you first have to build a neighborhood. To build a neighborhood, you first have to build the families that make up the neighborhood. To build the families that make up the neighborhood, you first have to build the family that initiates the struggle. To build a family that initiates the struggle, you have to create the individual, okay, who's conscious of the need to have a family. And then that family become conscious of the need to make relationships with other families. That forms a neighborhood. A neighborhood is a group of people living together in the same geography, in the same space, speaking basically the same language and practice the same culture, but don't own the land. Now, when you own the land, it becomes a community. You understand? And the community needs to be governed. And if you can govern the community by controlling the politics and economic and culture where you're living, then you can begin to create a nation by joining with other communities of like kind, of your race kind. Even if you're not geographically contiguous, you can still create a nation. And so history resolves the mystery, but it's only the beginning of the journey. Find God by searching in yourself. Find any science that can show me that death happens, other than in some esoteric term that we don't function as an organism in this same formulation. Tell them to tell me what happened to the enemy, the energy that was me when I'm no longer animated. Tell science to find me. Go find the energy that you're hearing right now. Find that energy that's putting all this vibration out here that stay eternally. Find that energy and corral it. The only thing that can corral it is the things I'm attracted to, and that's the Ibi, the family I came out of. That's my magnetic attraction. In Nigeria and the Yoruba, it says you're born into the same Ibi that your original generate gene pool started. And each time you rebirth, you come back as a baby in that generation. And we've seen our people say, oh, who that come back there? That must be auntie so-and-so, that's uncle so-and-so, that grandpa so-and-so. We never really lost it. We just didn't take it serious enough anymore. The truth is, we come back in them babies we call our grandbabies and great-grandbabies. Those are us. Repeating ourselves. Aspects of us. Because we have multiple grands. Nobody ever dies. As long as they got you thinking you're dying, then you're dead. Nobody dies. We recycle and transform. Matter of fact, even in the Yoruba system, this is, I've been joking. Yeah, I've been joking. Has I been joking? He did his book on Yoruba history and culture. And he talks about a concept called awo. I may be pronouncing it wrong. But it says you got 8 times to die in this physical kind of realm. You got 8 chances to come back and perfect yourself. But each time you come back, you got 7 steps of perfection you must develop in yourself. But when you go, they even in African culture, I do it with all of my family if I get close enough. I know they're leaving. People say, Jay, what you doing? I'm whispering in their ears. But they need to tell the ancestors about what's going on down there with the rest of this family. So whoever they send back at least got the information they need to have. Because it's also that we go into the ancestors that are there, and they kind of like act like our physicians and a doctor. They kind of fix us up and add some stuff to us, and they send us back down here again. Tell somebody disprove it. They can't disprove that there's no such thing as death. The way the West try to tell you there's something called death. They can't tell you where the energy that is me is when it's no longer in this house called my body. And even when they put me in the ground, it isn't amazing that it's only in where white people came in. See, we did in ancient Kemet, and that's probably the mistake we made. We got so rich and powerful, we started putting our ancestors in stone sarcophagus and locking the spirits up. Shit went bad right after that. Maybe when we were burying us in the ground and let us coming back into nature and resurfacing back into the world, things wasn't so bad for us. But no, we got smart. I know some of my chematology brothers going to be up and mad about this one, but we started locking them up in tombs and locking them up in granite stones. And maybe they just want to get the hell out. That's why they called the white man in and said, let me call one of my crazy children. Come here, raid the tombs, break the box open, and set me free. You never know. Truth is strange. But what happened in the old days? We took this old body, we laid it in the ground, covered it up with some dirt. When the sunlight hit it, the water evaporated out of it. The body dried up. The water went up to the sky, became a cloud, rained back down to the earth, and became water that you drank from the same dead body that you buried, and watered the plant that you ate from the same dead body that you buried, and you paid no attention to it. I'm eating granny, y'all. I'm drinking granny. Because you didn't understand the cycle of nature and how it works. Now you get your technology and interrupt that cycle, something's going to go wrong. We're still trying to figure out what is it that we did wrong that has caused all this confusion. And we need to continue that study until we figure it out. That's just my little loaning to it. We should not have ever locked our people up in stone boxes. We should have put them back to nature and let them be recycled back into cosmology. You know? Because each bit of when that body breaks down, right? The iron goes back to the iron in the earth. The zinc go back to the zinc in the earth. You go there in a few years. You go there in a few years with a shovel and dig up that sand. Ain't nothing there but sand, right? Ain't nothing there but dirt. Okay? So where was the body? This is the body. The earth is the body that you came out of and the body that this house returned to. Cosmology and all the light energy. We're in this room right now. We're being zapped from the light of the sun, the light of every star, the light of every planet. Some may have taken some of the light that we are ingesting right now, may have taken millions of years to get to us. But that light makes us up. You don't understand that? You got to really get this thing. Otherwise, the black man keep fooling you. We are the universe. This body, human thing is just a transposition. This is just an expression of an aspect of the thing. The bumblebee is just as a significant expression as you are. How dare you to belittle the bumblebee? You know? So when we think of the need for political power, I already told you the need for political power. How do you get it? Study the political institution you're part of. You can be socialist all you want in capitalist America, and I'm going to tell you a little secret, it ain't going to work for you. Okay? It sounds cute on paper. Sounds good in a room, a meeting when you're having an argument about ideology, But this is capitalist America. And if you want to make this thing work for you without being an oppressive capitalist, you can make it work for you because you have a system of justice that can be a part of your way of life. They're trying to make it work without any system of justice being involved. We are the people of justice. And we have to learn how to use our justice. That's why you got to know your history. See? He's taken your science and taken the divine out of the science and got you fooled and think he's gone to space. Now they're trying to figure out a rocket to get them to the moon. Didn't that tell you that they've never really been to the moon? They've played that been to the moon game. Even the astronauts said, we don't believe we went to the moon, right? So now they're trying to figure out how to get to the moon. But we don't have to get to the moon. The Dogon told you don't have to get to the moon because you are the moon. You just have to know the moon in you, right? But I'm going to stop right here because I got a plane to catch. And Brother Jabari may want to ask a couple of questions. But thank you very much. I tried to give you something about your culture.
Family. So what we want to do is we want to talk about real quick, real fast. We got food. We got food here, and I especially got them to come out today. They not normally open on Sundays, so I told them definite. So they did come out specially today for this test. All right, fam. We're gonna begin to wind down just to have a few more questions because we got definitely get ready to hit the road. So we just have a few. We're gonna get ready to wind up. But what we want to do for anybody that's been supporting Reality Speaks through the years, that want to make a donation. We got a lot of things going on still. But like I said, it's been 29 years. I don't think we let y'all down. We have had one of the most successful lecture series in the world. When it comes to African scholars and different topics, topics of that nature. So if you want to donate, here in Baltimore, in Tubman City, those that's looking, we have the Barber and Boot Camp that we have. Our own Conscious Heads Barbershop. We've been there for 22 years this year. We'll be there 22 years and, been servicing the community. So now we have young people that we training as barbers. We was outside yesterday actually cutting hair for free out in front of the barbershop. So those my students were cutting hair for free in front of the barbershop while we had the professional barbers on the inside. And most of the professional barbers on the inside come from my Barber and Boot Camp. Every barber comes from my Barber and Boot Camp except for one barber that's in my shop. But he works with the boot camp. So it's a movement that we have going on. Have a shop here soon in the next few years or whatever. We'll have shops start to spread out everywhere. And then we want to get over to Mother Africa and be able to do something there. So if you support what it is that we're doing, it's bigger than talk. We're not just saying we're gonna open up a school, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. We actually doing it. Yeah. We do, you know what I mean? So for those for the Cash App, it's $ Jabari, JABARINATUR. So $ Jabari Natur. If you want to send the Cash App, if any other way that you want to send, just let us know. So anybody want to give donations, you can actually do that. Do we have a basket? Get a bag or something right quick. And don't be shy about family. Your hundreds, your 50s, and your 20s. You know what I mean? Seriously, we got legends in our midst, so don't be shy. We want to be able to, send them home well and be able to put some finances towards the programs that we actually have coming. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask? Oh, y'all don't? You don't want to shut it down now? Any questions right quick? We only have time for a few.
Only got time for a few questions, and I got to hit the road. I know there were a few people who did come and ask questions off camera.
Did you want to answer that?
No, I did for them personally. So.
Do you have anything in New York where you do this type of series that maybe we could come to? I don't mind traveling.
No. No, we did the course online a few years ago, which went very well, but I made it too big. So I was working with Sister for a while, and we had it was very successful, but I was doing too much. I was doing like 2 hours a week and two sessions a week, 2 hours each. That was too much work. Just the prep time was getting ready for those classes was too much. And we gave certificates for those who proved that they really could master the body knowledge. But we want to do it again. It'll be a little less, maybe only once a month, you know, or maybe a 2-hour piece once a month. But we're trying to work on what that would look like, you know. And you can go, I have a page on Facebook. It's called Professor Small African World. So just check in there every now and then. Everything I do comes up on that page. And yes. ProfessorJamesSmall.com, the website, you can go there and also sign up. Thank you, Sister Farwa.
You
Yes.
talked about the disruption of the natural process of decomposition when we were put in the sarcophagus. Is that the same? Is that true with cremation as well?
And I've given that some deep thought, there was even a thing I was looking up the other day studying cremation, because I was going to talk about it a little bit down here. But when cremation, you're still releasing back. You're not locking it out. Even the smoke that goes out of that chimney, that's you, and it's going back into the elements. And the ashes, you know, wherever you sprinkle it, it's going to end up back in earth. What you shouldn't do is keep the ashes in an urn. The ashes should be sprinkled somewhere back to the earth. Some people I know keep the urn on their mantle. No, that's imprisoning. Put them back in the earth where they came from. They're earth, you know, because the energy leaves when we stop the breathing and stop that oxidation, right? And when you do the burning, the moisture leaves, and then you're just left with the little bit of dust, really. And that should be sprinkled back to earth. Let it integrate back into the earth. Yeah, that's the only thing I would say.
All right, one last question, fam. We got to hit the rule. All right, one last.
I'm so glad I came, Professor. I've been following you for a lot of
One
years.
second. Sister Farwa, you want to do a brother a favor? You can make any choice you want. Go give me a little bit of food so I can be eating while we're on the way. Yeah, it's in the bag. Look at that. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I just want to say I like your last point when you were talking about the Egyptians putting their people in the caskets. I thought that was when you look at our history, we became so political instead of spiritual, and that's what's our downfall as a people, becoming so politicized and becoming unnatural. And that was the cause of our destruction. Before we were spiritual people, we were a lot more powerful, and religion got into the
No,
way.
I'm not going to let you
politics.
do that. No. Throw that thing about we were spiritual people. We need to throw the concept spiritual out of our vocabulary. We were normal. We were normal. See, when you say spiritual, then you're going to make spiritual opposed to what? Religion opposed to spiritual. No. Religion is a good tool of people's cultural
Isn't that two
system.
different things, though?
No,
Religion
they're
and
two
spirit.
different things. But the feet is different from the hand, but they're on the same body, right? What we call in this dichotomy, white people looking at things, everything is a dichotomy. Everything is fighting. No. If you study religion, it's just a way to explain the thing that we are calling spiritual to ourselves through practice. The problem is, if you don't have institutions to hold people ethically and morally accountable, it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's not going to work. There were some chiefs in Africa, tens of thousands of them, who died fighting to keep slavery from happening. But then you had a few hundred who let greed and ego and arrogance dominate them, and they got involved in the slave trade itself.
That's true.
So we talk about how are we going to govern, even if it means taking a head. How are we going to govern the ethical and moral practice of the people who are responsible for the social order? And that's where institutions come in, that like the things that have evolved. We can't confuse the white church and religion for what the African community had, because we had a way of teaching it too. But it wasn't this vulnerable thing that was so meaningless, because no one can hold a preacher accountable. You know, no one can hold the Pope accountable. Pope is a bigger mass murderer than Hitler ever could be,
Right.
but no one holds them accountable for being a mass murderer. All right. So we have to figure, okay, among ourselves, where do we find the accountability structure? That's why you go back in history and study your culture. Where did the breakdown take place? And I say it's in the accountability structure. How do we hold people accountable for their behavior? What was the institutional construct that failed? And do we have to create a better one? Because just because we had something don't mean it works that well, you know? Obviously, it didn't work well enough. Yeah, but I don't want you to get caught up in saying spirituality against religion, because religion should be a tool of what you're calling spirituality. But if you can't hold the people responsible who's accountable for the tool's integrity, then the tool becomes worthless. So it comes back to how we design ourselves. It comes back to what the Yorubas call the Orishas, and the Akans call the Obosum, and the ancient Kemetic called the Neteru. It's the qualities and attributes that makes up your character that will determine your behavior. And there should be a system in place. Council of Elders was what was there before, that holds you accountable for learning these practices and deploy them in your daily character. And that's when community takes responsibility for itself. But you got to have something to take responsibility for. And so those are the things that have gotten shattered that we got to reconstruct. But studying history is the first place you go. What was it that, if somebody says, fix that vase that fell off of the chimney and broke, well, the first thing you got to do is find all the broken pieces of the vase. Because you don't even know what the shape of it was until you find the broken pieces and begin to reconstruct that vase. And then if there's some missing pieces, you'll know what those missing pieces are, and you can go find a replacement for it. So we've been shattered, we've been fractured, we've been broken, and we need to fix ourselves. And the best glue is history. Because the first thing it's going to erase is the enemy's mystery. And then that's not just a cliche. But don't let them get you caught. Everything is not this dichotomic relationship. We have the relationship that is complementary. The African culture is a complementary relationship of opposites, not a structurally fighting opposite. That's why when I see brothers and sisters, I'm going to end with this, the last question, talk about Set and Heru, they make them enemies. He was fighting his uncle all through the night. He punched his eyes out. That's the metaphor. What is that fight supposed to be about? It's about seeking harmony and balance with both things in place. There can be no Heru without a Set. There can be no Set without a Heru. But Set and Heru must find a place of balance. And that brings in Ma'at, the harmony, you know. But it's a struggle. None of this information gives you instant. You're going to spend from the cradle to the grave still not finding most of the answers you're looking for. But if you just find one, that would be so enlightening, you know. But thank you, brothers and sisters. Peace and blessings. Maybe I can get one more while the sister's preparing this food. I'll take one more question. There's nothing broken between the African man and the African woman except they lie to each other too much.